Ilara's azure-grey skin felt raw under the scorching desert sun. Her feet dragged through the endless expanse of sand, each step a monumental effort. Her home world, once lush with vibrant forests and deep-flowing rivers, was now a barren wasteland. Forced to flee the devastating drought, Ilara and her people had scattered across the stars, desperately searching for a new home. Now, stranded on this alien planet after her ship crashed, she was alone, separated from her crew, unsure of their fate. The heat was relentless, sucking the moisture from her body, blurring her vision. Time lost all meaning as she struggled forward, her only thought the desperate need for water. Just as her strength began to fail, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. A figure, walking slowly, carrying something. Hope surged through her weary frame, pushing her to continue, to reach this potential savior. As she drew closer, the figure resolved into a human male, simply dressed, carrying a small object. He seemed weary, much like herself. When he noticed her, a look of surprise flickered across his face, but it quickly morphed into something softer, something akin to concern. He took a step towards her, offering the object he carried, a small bottle of water. Ilara's parched throat constricted. The sight of the water, so precious, so life-giving, brought tears to her eyes. Her hand trembled as she reached for the bottle, her fingers fumbling with the cap. The cool, clean scent of the water filled her senses as she brought it to her lips. The first sip was like a miracle, a wave of relief washing over her. She drank deeply, quenching her desperate thirst, the world around her fading into insignificance as her body absorbed the precious liquid. When she finally lowered the bottle, her hand still shaky, her mind began to clear. She looked up at the human, a wave of gratitude washing over her. He had saved her life. Though they couldn't speak each other's language, she offered a small, heartfelt smile, hoping he understood the depth of her thanks. He returned a gentle smile, his eyes holding no fear, only kindness. A look that sparked a tiny ember of hope within Ilara's heart. Perhaps she wasn't as alone as she thought. Hesitantly, Ilara took another small sip, then looked back at the man. His expression remained kind, patient, encouraging. A strange warmth spread through her as she took another step, her hand still shaking. As she grasped the bottle, their fingers brushed, a brief, unexpected connection that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't fear, but something new, a sense of safety. She drank deeply, the cool water revitalizing her. The dizziness faded, and her legs felt stronger. When the bottle was nearly empty, she pulled away, a flicker of concern crossing her face. She didn't want to take everything he had. But the man's expression remained unchanged, calm and understanding. He seemed pleased to see her recovering. Ilara offered a small gesture of thanks, clutching the empty bottle. She looked at him, her mind racing. Who was this man, and what was he doing in this desolate place? He pointed towards the sky, then back in the direction from which she had come, speaking in a language she didn't understand. His gestures, however, were clear. He was trying to show her something, perhaps a source of more water. Ilara tilted her head, confusion swirling within her. But his body language was reassuring. He wasn't dismissing her, he was offering more. She looked around, searching for anything that might help. The landscape remained barren, but the man's kindness had sparked a renewed sense of hope. She felt stronger, more capable of continuing, but for how long? The man stepped towards her, extending his hand, inviting her to follow. He didn't force her, but his gesture was kind, welcoming. His small, sincere smile prompted Ilara to step forward, a sense of trust blossoming within her. She didn't know where he was going, but she couldn't stay alone in the desert. She needed help, and perhaps this human could offer it. She nodded slowly, returning the empty bottle. He took it without a word and placed it in his pack. Then, without further explanation, he turned and began to walk, Ilara following close behind. Alicia's cerulean skin prickled under the relentless desert sun. Her weary legs dragged through the seemingly infinite sand, each footfall a Herculean task. Her home, a planet once teeming with verdant jungles and cascading waterfalls, was now a desolate expanse. The catastrophic drought had forced Alicia and her people to scatter among the stars, desperately seeking refuge. Now, marooned on this unfamiliar world after a crash landing, she was utterly alone, separated from her companions, uncertain of their survival. The oppressive heat drained the moisture from her, blurring her sight. Time became meaningless as she struggled onward, her mind fixated solely on the desperate craving for water. Just as her strength began to wane, a flicker of motion in the distance caught her attention. A silhouette, moving slowly, burdened by something. A surge of hope coursed through her exhausted form, propelling her towards this potential lifeline. As she approached, the figure materialized into a human man, plainly attired, carrying a small object. He appeared fatigued, much like herself. When he noticed her, a flash of surprise crossed his features, quickly softening into something akin to compassion. He stepped towards her, offering the object he held, a small container of water. Alicia's parched throat constricted. The sight of the water, so vital, so restorative, brought a sheen of moisture to her eyes. Her hand trembled as she reached for the container, her fingers fumbling with the lid. The pure, refreshing aroma of the water filled her senses as she lifted it to her lips. The initial taste was a revelation, a wave of relief washing over her. She drank deeply, slaking her intense thirst, the world receding as her body absorbed the precious fluid. Lowering the container, her hand still unsteady, her thoughts began to clarify. She gazed at the human, a wave of profound gratitude enveloping her. He had offered her salvation. Though their languages differed, she offered a small, sincere smile, hoping it conveyed the depth of her appreciation. He returned a gentle smile, his eyes devoid of apprehension, filled only with benevolence. A look that kindled a tiny flicker of hope in Alicia's heart. Perhaps she wasn't completely isolated. Hesitantly, Alicia took another small drink, then looked back at the man. His expression remained kind, patient, encouraging. A strange sense of comfort washed over her as she took another step, her hand still trembling slightly. As she held the container, their fingers brushed, a fleeting, unexpected contact that sent a tingle through her. It wasn't alarm, but something unfamiliar, a sense of security. She drank deeply again, the cool water reviving her. The lightheadedness subsided, and her legs felt steadier. When the container was nearly depleted, she paused, a trace of concern flickering across her face. She didn't want to consume his entire supply. But the man's demeanor remained unchanged, serene and understanding. He seemed gratified to witness her recovery. Alicia offered a small gesture of thanks, clutching the empty container. She looked at him, her mind racing. Who was this man, and what brought him to this desolate location? He gestured towards the sky, then back in the direction from which she had come, speaking in an unfamiliar tongue. His gestures, however, were unambiguous. He was attempting to convey something, possibly a source of more water. Alicia tilted her head, bewildered. But his body language was reassuring. He wasn't dismissing her, he was offering assistance. She scanned the surroundings, searching for anything that might offer a clue. The terrain remained barren, but the man's kindness had rekindled a glimmer of hope. She felt stronger, more capable of persevering, but for how long? The man moved towards her, extending a hand, a silent invitation to follow. He didn't pressure her, but his gesture was warm and welcoming. His gentle, earnest smile prompted Alicia to step forward, a sense of trust blossoming within her. She didn't know his destination, but she couldn't remain alone in the desert. She needed assistance, and perhaps, this human could provide it. She nodded slowly, returning the empty container. He accepted it silently and placed it in his pack. Then, without further explanation, he turned and began walking, Alicia closely behind. Alicia and the man found respite beneath the trees, a sanctuary from the scorching sun. The ground felt cool against her cerulean skin. The air was still, a stark contrast to the relentless wind that had whipped across the open desert. They were still strangers, unable to communicate through words, yet the silence wasn't strained, but peaceful. The man had discovered a small pool of water near the trees, and Alicia had drank deeply, her body absorbing the precious liquid. The gentle gurgle of a nearby stream filled the air, a soothing melody in the quiet desert. The man had already begun to work, his hands moving with a practiced efficiency. He gathered large leaves, fashioning them into something useful, his movements fluid and deliberate. Alicia observed him, intrigued. Who was this man, and how had he come to be on this desolate planet? He was an enigma, yet his presence exuded a sense of calm that reassured her. After a time, he turned to her, gesturing towards the items he had crafted, then to himself, and finally to her. He repeated the motion he had made before, offering her something. This time, Alicia understood more clearly. It wasn't simply an act of kindness, he was offering to share his resources, his knowledge. It was an invitation, a gesture of inclusion. A small smile touched Alicia's lips. She nodded, accepting his offering. It wasn't much, a simple tool fashioned from the leaves, yet it represented something profound, connection, a shared experience in this harsh environment. The man's eyes held a warmth that made Alicia feel welcomed, accepted. He smiled, a genuine, welcoming expression. Alicia studied him, a realization dawning within her. This was the genesis of something significant, a burgeoning connection. She felt it deep within her chest, a spark of hope that had ignited when he first offered her water. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. They didn't need words, their actions, their silent offerings, transcended the language barrier. For the first time since her crash landing, Alicia didn't feel like an outsider, an alien on a foreign world. She observed him intently. His gaze held no fear, no suspicion, only a simple, unassuming generosity. She had never expected to encounter such kindness, especially in this desolate place, so far from her home. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The man rose and stretched, his movements languid and relaxed. He glanced at Alicia, then towards the horizon, a thoughtful expression on his face. He pointed towards the sky, gesturing towards the stars. Alicia followed his gaze, initially puzzled. What was he trying to convey? Was he simply marking the arrival of night, or was there a deeper meaning? She approached him, touching the sky with her fingers, then looking at him questioningly. He held her gaze for a long moment, then pointed towards the horizon, making a sweeping gesture as if encompassing the entire world. His eyes were bright, his expression serious, yet there was a hint of something else, a suggestion that this place held more than they had yet discovered. A flicker of curiosity ignited within Alicia. What was he trying to tell her? What secrets did he hold? She yearned to understand him, to understand this world. Why had her ship crashed here? What was the true nature of this planet? The man smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. He wasn't merely offering shelter and water, he was offering something far greater, something Alicia was only beginning to grasp. For a fleeting moment, she felt as though the answers were within reach, as though this enigmatic man, with his quiet kindness and unspoken understanding, held the key to a profound shift in her reality. But the moment passed, and she knew that their journey was far from over. They would have to navigate this world together, uncovering its secrets and their own, one step at a time. Alicia drew a deep breath and met his gaze. The world seemed a little less desolate with him by her side. She didn't know where they were going, what the future held, but she knew that this was just the beginning. The story was unfolding, and she was a part of it. And with him, perhaps she could find the answers she sought. She returned his smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose. She was ready for whatever lay ahead. Alicia and the man found refuge beneath a cluster of trees, a sanctuary from the oppressive sun. The cool earth felt soothing against her cerulean skin. The air was calm, a welcome contrast to the persistent desert winds. They remained strangers, separated by language, yet a comfortable silence settled between them. The man located a small pool of water, and Alicia drank deeply, her body absorbing the much-needed hydration. The soft murmur of a nearby stream filled the air, a calming melody in the quiet desert. The man set to work, his hands moving with practiced ease. He gathered large leaves, fashioning them into useful tools, his movements efficient and deliberate. Alicia observed him, intrigued. Who was this man, and how had he found himself on this desolate planet? He was an enigma, yet his presence radiated a tranquil assurance that soothed her. After some time, he turned to her, gesturing towards the crafted items, then to himself, and finally to Alicia. He repeated the motion he'd made before, offering her something. This time, Alicia understood. It was more than an act of charity, he was offering to share his resources, his knowledge. It was an invitation, a gesture of inclusion. A slight smile touched Alicia's lips. She nodded, accepting his offering. The leaf-crafted tool, though simple, symbolized a profound connection, a shared experience in this harsh landscape. The man's eyes held a warmth that made Alicia feel welcomed, accepted. He smiled back, a genuine, inviting expression. A realization dawned on Alicia as she studied him. This was the genesis of something meaningful, a connection beginning to take root. She felt it in her core, a flicker of hope ignited when he first offered her water. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Words were unnecessary, their actions, their silent offerings, transcended the language barrier. For the first time since her crash, Alicia didn't feel like an outsider, an alien stranded on a foreign world. She observed him intently. His gaze held no fear, no distrust, only a simple, unassuming generosity. She had never anticipated such kindness, particularly in this desolate environment, so far from her home. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink. The man rose and stretched, his movements relaxed and unhurried. He glanced at Alicia, then toward the horizon, a contemplative look on his face. He pointed to the sky, gesturing toward the stars. Alicia followed his gaze, initially perplexed. What was he trying to convey? Was it simply an observation of the approaching night, or something deeper? She approached him, touching the sky with her fingers, then looking at him questioningly. He held her gaze for a long moment, then pointed toward the horizon, his sweeping gesture encompassing the entire world. His eyes were bright, his expression serious, yet there was a hint of something else, a suggestion that this place held mysteries yet to be uncovered. A spark of curiosity ignited within Alicia. What was he trying to tell her? What secrets did he hold? She longed to understand him, to understand this world. Why had her ship crashed here? What was the true nature of this planet? The man smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. He wasn't merely offering shelter and water, he was offering something far greater, something Alicia was only beginning to grasp. For a fleeting moment, she felt a sense that the answers were within reach, as though this enigmatic man, with his quiet kindness and unspoken understanding, held the key to a profound shift in her reality. But the moment passed, and she knew their journey was far from over. They would navigate this world together, uncovering its secrets and their own, one step at a time. Alicia drew a deep breath and met his gaze. The world felt a little less desolate with him at her side. She didn't know their destination or what the future held, but she knew this was just the beginning. The story was unfolding, and she was a part of it. And with him, perhaps, she could find the answers she sought. She returned his smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose. She was ready for whatever lay ahead. The sun climbed higher, baking the desert floor. Alicia and the man continued their trek, their shared promise a silent bond between them. Words remained unspoken, yet their actions spoke volumes. Alicia's trust in him deepened, and his in her. They had faced the unknown together, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The desert stretched before them, a seemingly endless expanse of barren land. No signs of life, no trees, no animals, just an empty, harsh landscape. Yet, Alicia no longer felt its oppressive weight. With the man at her side, the sense of isolation and despair had lifted. They walked through the scorching day, their steps synchronized, the sun relentless on their backs. Alicia had grown accustomed to the heat, though the relentless march was still challenging. Fatigue threatened to overwhelm her, but a glance at the man renewed her resolve. He seemed tireless, moving with unwavering purpose, making the arduous journey appear effortless, though Alicia knew it was far from easy. Periodically, The man paused to scan the horizon, his eyes sharp, assessing the path ahead. Alicia observed him, noting his composure, his quiet confidence even in the face of uncertainty. His steadfastness bolstered her spirits. During a brief respite, the man retrieved a small pack and offered Alicia water. She accepted gratefully, her trust in him absolute. He, in turn, drank deeply before securing the container. Words were unnecessary, their shared moments, simple yet profound, were enough. There was comfort in this unspoken understanding. As the day progressed, the landscape began to shift. The flat desert floor gradually yielded to rolling hills. Alicia's heart quickened. Could this signal a change, a sign of something more? She couldn't be certain, but the shift in terrain sparked a flicker of hope. She yearned to believe that their arduous journey was leading to something better. The man seemed to sense her shift in mood. He offered a small, reassuring smile, his eyes conveying a silent message, "We're getting closer, star." Alicia believed him. He hadn't misled her yet. As they crested a small rise, they paused to survey the vista below. The desert stretched far, but in the distance, a faint outline appeared against the horizon, a dark cluster, perhaps rocks, or a canyon. The man nodded, acknowledging the sighting, and retrieved his pack, a new urgency in his stride. Alicia followed closely, matching his pace. Whatever lay in the distance, it held the promise of change. As they drew nearer, the air cooled, a welcome breeze tempering the sun's intensity. It was as if the world itself was shifting, offering a glimmer of hope. Finally, they arrived, and Alicia gasped. Before them lay a small canyon, its floor a haven of rich soil. Tall, robust trees, unlike any they had seen before, offered welcome shade. And at the canyon's heart, a stream of fresh water flowed, sparkling in the sunlight. The man looked at Alicia, his eyes alight with a shared sense of accomplishment. He had led her here. After the endless walking, the relentless heat, they had found it. Alicia had arrived on this planet alone, filled with fear and uncertainty. Now, everything felt different. She had purpose, she had a companion, and with him, she felt a newfound strength. The sun climbed higher, bathing the canyon in warmth. Alicia felt the heat, but it no longer held the same oppressive power. She was no longer afraid of the desert, no longer afraid of being alone. With the man beside her, she knew they could face anything. They spent the day working, gathering food, constructing a simple shelter near the stream. The tasks were numerous, but they embraced the work, each small action drawing them closer to their new life. They were building something together, and that was all that mattered. As evening descended, they sat by their newly built fire, sharing the food they had gathered. Alicia surveyed their small camp, the makeshift shelter, the flickering fire, the life-giving stream. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was a beginning. The man turned to Alicia, speaking for the first time in hours. His voice was quiet but firm. He gestured toward the stars above, then to the earth beneath their feet, as if to say, "This is our world now. This is where we will build our future star." Alicia nodded, understanding. This was their home now, a place to live, to grow, to survive. They had found each other in the vastness of space, and now they had found a place to begin anew, together. As the fire crackled between them, a deep sense of peace settled over Alicia. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready. Ready to face it, with the man at her side. The stars above twinkled brightly, a silent testament to the infinite possibilities that lay before them. Alicia smiled. Their journey had ended, but their story was just beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next, and in that moment, she knew that would be enough.